I will bring us out of executive session. Madam Mayor, do you have a notice to read there?
Yes, during executive session, we were brought up to date by our attorney on a couple litigation matters, one of them being Telephone Hill. So on Thursday, September 25th, the city attorney was alerted by Alaska Legal Services that at least one resident of Telephone Hill did not properly receive notice that the city was ending their rental agreement. When the city staff followed up with the property management company, JPR Management, it became clear that the property manager company did not provide legal proof of service. At this point, city staff have been able to verify that emails were sent on May 28th and August 17th, and notices were posted on the doors, but were not documented. We appreciate being alerted to this important issue. Given the information we have, new notices to vacate will be provided tomorrow. Tenants will be required to move out by November 1st, and if there are any damages, we will seek compensation for those damages.
Thank you for that, Madam Mayor. Mr. Kelly, maybe would you read the land acknowledgement, please?
Thank you. We would like to acknowledge that the City and Borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunashchish.
Ms. Hendricks, would you please note the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. The roll is noted and you have quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. We have no minutes to approve, so that moves us to agenda topics. First off is Gold Belt Incorporated, the West Douglas Port. And Mr. Kelly has something he needs to say.
Thank you. I just wanted to disclose for the record that I have two stepchildren who are shareholders of Gold Belt. However, I have discussed this with the attorney, and she does not believe there is a conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Yep, so we are starting off, and Mr. Pierre, if you would join us, yeah. We've seen there's a memo in the packet and then also a presentation, but we're planning just to begin with presentation. And I think we discussed and I think it would be preferred to hold questions till the end of the presentation so we can get through it and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So Ms. Eldemar, Mr. Pierre, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, members of the Assembly. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you this evening. Thank you for allowing us to share and to take questions from everyone today. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm McHugh Pierre. I'm the president and CEO of Gold Belt Incorporated. And to my left is Catherine Eldemar, chair of the board of directors for Gold Belt Incorporated. And we have a presentation, and if it's all right with you, when we're ready to go next slide, we'll just call it out. And with that, I will yield the floor to Chair Eldemar. Thank you.
Oh, good, we're live. Good evening, Madam Mayor, CBJ members of the Assembly, and all distinguished guests online and here in person. First, I wanted to thank you all for inviting Gold Belt to this committee of the whole meeting to discuss Gold Belt Ani. Thank you, McHugh, for introducing us. My name, he said, is Catherine Eldemar. My Tlingit name is Nishakopwe. I am Cha'ak, Kagwan Tan, and Ductain Tan Yeti. So what I have just shared with you is I am Eagle Wolf, and it is a pleasure to be here with you on Tlingit Ani. I do appreciate and thank very much the CBJ for the land acknowledgement to begin this meeting. We are standing literally on Tlingit land. It is appropriate to then mention our Tlingit culture. It is tied to our land. For over 10,000 years, we have lived here, fed our families, taken care of our communities, and it is all coexisting with our land, consistent with our culture. We're fast forwarding to 2025, which is tonight. I am here as Gold Belt's chairman of the board, and we're to discuss Gold Belt Ani, Gold Belt's ANCSA lands. Which slide are we on? Around the community, different members at times have asked me, how long have you been involved with Gold Belt? And when I was young, I answered very quickly and I said, well, I was elected at 25, and I believe the youngest board member ever at Gold Belt. And as I repeatedly received this question, I started thinking about it a little bit more. And I thought, well, that's not quite right. It's a little more complex than that, as are most issues. So I'd like to introduce you verbally to my father. His name is John Eldemar Jr. He's been deceased ever since I was 16. The reason why I mention him is he was one of the interim directors for Gold Belt Incorporated. Now, he was really good, like most parents. They can explain things to you when you're a kid in a meaningful way. And what he told me about ANCSA and my sisters, he says, we are going to form corporations. And if the corporations do well, we're all going to do well. But if they don't, he didn't say a word. Instead, his eyes were cast down to the side, and he said nothing. And that communication was so powerful, it resonated even in me as a child. And I thought, don't really know what a corporation is, but we have to do well. So ANCSA, in fact, has happened, and during our young age, I will admit I am low tech. I grew up in that era where we did not have computers in our homes, nor did we have cell phones at our disposal. So what does that mean? In the world of ANCSA, that meant my three sisters and I were given the great honor of coloring maps. My dad brought home these huge paper maps, and it was land that was going to be selected for ANCSA corporations. So my mother had convinced him that we could do this coloring, my sisters and I. And says she went to the store and she bought a lot, bought out all the green pencils, all of the red pencils, and we came home and we colored these maps. We're going to select where the trees are, where are the cedar trees, where are the hemlocks, where's the spruce. And my dad explained it to my sisters and I that, well, we're selecting the best land that we can. We don't want to select the glaciers because that's not really valuable, and we don't want the mountaintops, but we're going to color these maps so that we can do very well as corporations. Fast forward from ANCSA 50 years, Gold Belt has celebrated its existence as an Alaska Native corporation, an ANCSA corporation. At its inception, Gold Belt had 2,722 tribal member shareholders. Those early days, well, that was the secret part of my presentation. The early days were challenging for Gold Belt. Unlike other corporate ANCs, we didn't have any, we were given land under ANCSA. We selected land, we weren't given it, it was selected. And there was no money. They really struggled. There were no Harvard law, Harvard business, Yale business or law around the table, but they were smart. And they never gave up. No matter what the challenge, they overcame, they adapted, and here we are today. In the early days, it was anticipated, in fact, that some of the ANCs may not survive, and in fact, some haven't. Gold Belt, I'm here to say, proudly, from our board of directors, from our shareholders and our community members, is a forever company. And what does that mean? Well, we expect to do well, sufficiently well that we have a product and or service that is welcome and wanted, and we can employ people. And if we do, we strive for excellence, we, in fact, can continue to be a forever company. So we are on the next slide, I believe. Thank you. Gold Belt has ANCSA lands, and they're located in different locations. Some more present here in the city and borough of Juneau include Echo Cove, Cascade Point, you've probably heard of those places, and Douglas Island. We also have land in Petersburg Borough, which is Hobart Bay. Gold Belt Ani, Gold Belt land, is located on what's commonly referred to as Douglas Island, is the point of our discussion with the city and borough of Juneau today. Next slide, please. I keep looking to make sure that that slide matches mine. Gold Belt Ani on Douglas Island is in fact the topic of tonight's discussion. Gold Belt strives to fulfill the intent of ANCSA. What does that mean? ANCSA intends that these ANCs are not like normal businesses, I'll call them, where you just start up a business, shove a lot of money in your profits in your pockets, and you're all happy. We have a socioeconomic responsibility to our tribal members, shareholders. That is how it was structured. That is the intent. Because as I started out our discussion today, is we are all on Tlingit land, and it is expansive. This is just a small portion that remain in the possession of the ANCs. We do have a tremendous responsibility. So as we look at Douglas, we do not look in isolation. We look at our property and who are our neighbors. And you'll be happy to know, you probably already know, that CBJ in the 1970s selected over 3,400 acres of land. And that land is immediately interior to Gold Belt's property. I'm going to read an excerpt from the executive summary of the West Douglas Concept Plan. It's page 101. It's Gold Belt Inc. / City and Borough of Juneau, and Volkers is the author. It reads, in part, the property, 3,434 acres of city and borough land immediately interior of the Gold Belt property, is the largest developable block of land accessible to the existing city of Juneau. Now, I was born and raised here, and some of the more recent issues include, well, housing. There's a lot of land that's right next to Gold Belt's land on Douglas. There are additional plans that have been studied for West Douglas. And when I read and reread how much land the city has, all I have to say is, hello, neighbor. You are our neighbors. And neighbors do well when they get along. And we've always gotten along. We've worked on these plans together. In my tenure with Gold Belt, since it started in the late 1980s, the City and Borough of Juneau and Gold Belt have in fact worked together on plans within Juneau, within the Juneau area, West Douglas. The 1990 plan and the follow-ons were in concert with Gold Belt. So when I read in the newspaper, and I know everybody has perspectives, and some people are new to Juneau. Some people say, oh, I've never seen that. Well, it's there in black and white. I encourage anybody else to read it if you haven't read it already. It was thoughtful, was meaningful, and still relevant. Access to land is key. Wink, wink, neighbor. Our infrastructure is essential. How does it happen? Who pays? Well, I applaud CBJ. In 2018, the City and Borough of Juneau completed its Pioneer Road. And that little tiny, I'm sorry, the picture is so small, but that little picture is the ribbon cutting. And we have some fabulous people from City J there. And if you will notice, there's a jacket that looks just like mine. That's me. So Gold Belt, and I have personal knowledge, has been involved, whether it's the ribbon cutting at the end of the road, Cascade Point, which we're not, or out to Cascade Point by the Echo Cove area. Gold Belt has been a tremendous neighbor in the community. For that Echo Cove highway extension, Gold Belt gave its land for free. Now, how many people give land to the city, right? Well, okay, let's not talk about the state of Alaska, back and forth. But private people, we're good neighbors. We've always worked very well with the city, and we hope that that continues. Who pays in this in developments? Well, typically developers, and there's a whole system. But arguably, the City and Borough of Juneau has also given other developers millions of dollars of taxpayer funds so that they can further an interest of the city. City and Borough of Juneau has also given developers generous tax credits and deferments for furthering, for instance, affordable housing. We are here today to again share that we've been discussing development of our ANCSA land, and it's important. It's important because Gold Belt has been waiting for the access. The Pioneer Words is lovely. We're getting, I am getting the cue from McHugh.
We'll see. I got it. I just wanted you to know that instead of jumping slides, I wanted to make sure we stayed on target. So we have some grand designs. If you go to the next slide, please. As Chair Eldemar said, we haven't lost track of the ultimate vision, and that is to open up access and be the catalyst for responsible growth in the community. And so what we have here is not a conditional use permit application, right? It is a grand design. It is what we think we could see in the future. And we have some really big, bold ideas. We want to make sure that Gold Belt provides an opportunity for everyone to grow and build together. Gold Belt believes it can be the high tide that lifts all boats. One of the things that has been driving some of our discussion internally is the fact that the Department of Labor came out with a study in January in the Trends magazine, and it said, geez, in 25 years, we expect the population of Southeast to decline by 17%. And we took offense to that, right? We believe it's our mission to invest in the community, grow opportunities, build certainty, and provide that foundation for families to grow and have confidence to remain in Juneau. And this is one of the ways that we can do it, and we're excited to share this grand vision with you all today.
Thank you. Next slide. So, what is the why behind Gold Belt Ani? Again, we're glad to be here tonight because not everyone knows history, including Gold Belt Ani, our ANCSA lands. A lot is available with these other, with the CBJ and Gold Belt, West Douglas concept plans. And we do have additional slides to share with you today. Tlingit culture is tied to our land. Go to the next slide, please. So the proposed development of ANCSA land, Gold Belt Ani, is for a socioeconomic benefit reaching beyond Gold Belt Inc., its shareholders, but it extends to our community. We are definitely members of the community. We are not leaving Juneau. I think a lot of Alaskans understand pretty well that there are many instances where people and different companies come to Alaska. They harvest the resources, whether it's mining gold, silver, oil, etc., and the resources are gone, and then the people that came in to develop and get some gainful employment, they're gone too. But we are different. As I said, born and raised here, and with Gold Belt, we will do our darndest to make sure that this community continues to thrive. And that's how we fulfill our socioeconomic benefit, not only to Gold Belt, but throughout the community of Juneau and even extending throughout Southeast Alaska. We all understood through COVID that things were pretty challenging. And when the state of Alaska did not provide ferry service to different communities, Gold Belt and our Catamaran Seawolf stepped in. We are community members. We are forever company. And the next slide, or the other side, McHugh.
Sorry if you'll go back one more. I just wanted to hit on a couple of bullets here for everyone. You might say, why tourism? Well, tourism is a growing industry in Southeast. You all know that. A semi-private cruise destination allows us to have a customer base that will support the development of utility infrastructure. And that's so important. For us to do anything else in that area, we have to be able to overcome the $60 million price tag for utilities. And that's something that we understand we have to try to accomplish. While Gold Belt has the means today that it did not in 1991, we have been successful and been responsible stewards of the tribal shareholders company. It's still irresponsible to develop such an investment without a customer base to support it. And so that's why we sought the semi-private cruise destination to build that stable economic engine for our future growth. Next slide, please. And so I'd like to talk about some of the development stages, and this is really important for us and for our expectations for the future. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about stage 1, which is infrastructure, welcome center, and docks. Stage 2, which is retail, restaurants, and tourism experience. And then stage 3, when port construction is completed and future Gold Belt priorities begin. I think it's really important for everyone to remember, we're talking about a small piece of Douglas Island. It sounds big when you say 277 acres, but Gold Belt actually owns 1,830 acres. The coast essentially from Outer Point all the way down to Point Hilda. So there's a tremendous opportunity for the future once we have the basic infrastructure put in place for all of the future goals of that area to be finally realized. Next slide, please. So you can see right here that we're talking about where the end of the road on Douglas Highway currently stops, right? And so it's important for us to put that into perspective for where we're talking to develop. We're interested in utilizing the existing infrastructure with AEL&P to pull power. Gold Belt in 1999 gave an easement to AEL&P to power Greens Creek Mine with the intent to eventually power Hoona. That didn't work out, but we want to make sure that we leverage this ability and to pull power for residential and local use in that area. You can see that we believe that roads to provide access, a wastewater treatment facility, welcome center, all of the basic things that we need for infrastructure, logistical hubs. What we'd like is we'd like some future activity there that will support water-based transportation. And so we need some logistical planning spots for that. And so that, again, stage 1 is basic infrastructure and being able to access future development on the property. Then stage 2, next slide, please. We start to develop the more robust visitor experience where we have a trail system and a shelter. We have warehouses for businesses so you can conduct all of your business in that area and be self-sufficient. We have food and beverage. We have, water-based activities for excursions. But more important and kind of the crown jewel of our experience is the replica Tlingit Village. So it's something that's been, and I've worked for Gold Belt for over 10 years now. And when I first came to work for Gold Belt, that was one of the visions. The board said, hey, we've always wanted to have this village experience, like you've seen at the Polynesian Cultural Center in Oahu, or like Colonial Williamsburg in Chesapeake, Virginia area, where you can learn and you can immerse yourself, but it's also something for people to use in real time to preserve culture. There's a great blend there where you can share and educate, and you can also preserve. And we see a really cool nexus there from building the past, creating the present, and really forecasting and predicting the future, and having fun experiments for people to say, what will Tlingit culture be in 50 more years or 100 years? And so we're excited for that to be a real showcase for our tribal member shareholders to fully use. And I've talked to clans, and they said, man, we'd love to have a clan house there where we can use this as a partial museum. And we think that's really exciting. So when we talk about all of the future possibilities, that's a stage 2 level. But I'll turn next slide to stage 3 and pass the bigger dreams to Chair Eldamar.
It's fun to dream, and we've done it for years. But as McHugh had said, we weren't in a financial position, if you will, to realize those dreams. Plus, the infrastructure has been waiting to come to fruition. On stage 3, you see that we have a daycare center, the employee housing, the aviation center, food and beverage, and the current road, hydroponics, and even a spa. So it's fun to dream. Gold Belt, realistically, over 90% of our revenues are earned outside of the state of Alaska. Think about that. I touched on other companies coming here, taking Alaskan resources. But we are just the opposite. We're bringing resources here, and to what? To develop our ANCSA lands. So there's economic opportunity. You get to showcase our culture, and we get to share it with others throughout the community, and also people who are visitors. We also know that there's congestion downtown, and wouldn't it be nice to help alleviate some of that congestion for the many people who want to come and see Alaska? So this is just an outline, but it's fun to dream, as McHugh would say. So if we go to the next slide. McHugh, here's a visual. Go ahead. McHugh.
Sure. So we want to build something that is iconic and really stands out. And you see this. There's that structure in the center is a bentwood box. And so everything we're doing here on Gold Belt Ani is connecting culture to education to people. And we're excited because this is more than just a jobs creator. Sure, there's going to be road building and construction and all that stuff, but there's also going to be carving and all of the weaving and the storytelling and the ability to make culture a career. And that's something that we're really excited about and fascinated for. So it won't just stop when the facility is fully completed. It will continue on through the existence of the facility. And we're very, very excited to continue to represent the people and the place in a world-class way. So if we go to the next slide. So Gold Belt is committed to working with local businesses, shareholder and non-shareholder. I think that's important for everybody to understand. Again, we talked earlier about being the rising tide that lifts all boats. We believe that building capacity in our community allows our community to thrive and do better. If we build the skills here and we teach and we grow and we share and we learn, we will be able to accomplish more together for much longer and pass that through generations. Making sure that we have a strong customer will allow us to have the foundation for a more broad community growth. One of the things that we were talking about was, a potential barge landing, near the facility and all the cool, fun things that could happen as we continue to open up. Peter Metcalf continues to tell me about the golf course neighborhood that's available. And other people in the community said, geez, McHugh, isn't Gold Belt building that? And I said, no, go talk to Peter. Talk to Peter. That's where you want to go. So it's just fun to see the excitement to dream and all of the possibility that generates for the future. Next slide, please.
So you may be surmising by now that Gold Belt is a forever company. We are headquartered in Juneau, Alaska, and we have, since 1996, been operating the Gold Belt tram. You see that in the slide. The City and Borough of Juneau has been working with Gold Belt for almost 30 years with our tram operations. We are the second attraction for tourists, second only to the beautiful, wonderful, magnificent Mendenhall Glacier. The access provided by the Pioneer Road by CBJ opens up a wealth of opportunity to not only develop our ANCSA lands and proceed with Gold Belt Ani, but the opportunities for Juneau and other businesses. CBJ, I hope, will keep on working with Gold Belt, and as it works with us, not only will Gold Belt proceed with developing its property, Gold Belt Ani, but hopefully it would also provide opportunity for CBJ to maybe open up some of its over 3,000 acres and provide housing or whatever the city needs, deems necessary. Next slide.
I'd like to add in really quick, Madam Chair, that it's important for people to understand, this body and members of the public. One of the frequent questions we receive is Gold Belt sovereign? Does it have sovereign land? Will it pay any taxes? ANCSA land is not taxed when it's undeveloped. And that's a special provision that allows it to not be an element that would drag down a corporation and compromise the future and the intent of ANCSA. But when it is developed, it pays taxes. And as you saw right there, a $500 million investment expectation and 277 acres of land. With this development, Gold Belt is projected to be the largest taxpayer in the CBJ. And I think that's something that's important. It's not something that we're shying away from. It's something that we're proud of, because we're excited to contribute to the community, to have a strong community, and to put our money where our mouth is. If you say you believe in a strong community, then you invest in your community. Gold Belt is doing that happily through taxes. We're doing it happily through bringing our money back from our outside operations, and we are going to continue to honor the intent of ANCSA. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next slide.
And so as we continue to have updates on our developments and, frequently ask questions and answers, this is a great place to go, goldbeltani.com. And so we encourage people to go there. I know a lot of people know other people in the community. You're welcome to reach out to friends and family members, board members, Gold Belt employees, all of that stuff. But if you want to see some new drawings, this is a great place to go. Gold Belt, before we did this part of the development, we evaluated the land for the feasibility to build on it. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, they don't do that before they draw pictures. And when you draw a picture, it's really pretty, and you may not be able to develop that concept. But Gold Belt has evaluated the land. We know we can develop everything we're proposing at some time. The land will sustain it. And so that's really important to know. So, Madam Chair, I'll pass it to you for closing remarks. Last slide, please.
Yes, last slide. So thank you, CBJ Assembly, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your interest. We are just excited to see progress. It's slow, but we are patient people. Like I said, I've been on that board since the late 1980s. Don't start counting the decades. There are many. And we're just delighted that we're here today and we have a pathway forward. So, Gunshish, thank you for your time.
Gunshish, Ms. Eldermar, and Mr. Pierre for sharing your vision and intent with the project with us. Good for some questions from the Assembly. Very good. Who would like one? Miss Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Chair Aldemar and Mr. Pierre for being here. I'm glad you mentioned something that I'll make explicit, which is, as long as I've been on this body, we have been very interested in developing the backside of Douglas. I don't think we've been afraid of saying that because of the housing potential back there. But our biggest hurdle has been North Douglas Highway and what it can support for traffic, which is why we've been very aggressive at a second crossing. I'm imagining this will be a challenge for your project, or maybe are you intending to connect to the road system in your early phases, or how do you expect to address that, what we have found to be a big challenge about developing that area?
Thank you very much. Through the Deputy Mayor, Assemblymember Wool. Our intent, we call it semi-private because, you can't force people when you're adjacent to a public highway to not use the public highway, right? But our intent is to have a facility that would not encourage people to use the public highway. We would like to have everything go from the water side and use existing city infrastructure. It's something that we've been very deliberate in. As we looked at ways to accommodate people who might want to go to the glacier, we've kicked around the idea of operating a shuttle ferry because we believe we're going to lower the total amount of traffic in Auk Bay by removing visitors from the water excursion base there. If they go right from our facility, if we operated a shuttle ferry catamaran maybe every half hour, then you would dramatically lower the amount of people that were using Auk Bay for individual craft, and you'd be able to utilize existing infrastructure to get to the glacier. So that's our intent, is to have a fully functioning facility. Now, obviously, Gold Belt is interested in making sure that visitors get to use Eagle Crest. So we'd like to bus people to Eagle Crest. But that's going to be, we think, a smaller percentage of people. And we are working on a traffic study right now. So we've been very deliberate in pursuing all of the permits and making sure that we have all of the fundamental questions answered before we move forward with some kind of proposal that we don't believe is achievable or in our best interest.
Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I almost want to repeat the question from Ms. Wool because that's really the only question that I've heard people really be concerned about. I've only heard that people are excited about the potential land opportunities on the backside of Douglas. I'm one of your new neighbors out at North Douglas there. But the concern for North Douglas Highway is, I guess I can't even ask a question. That would just be the number one thing that folks are letting me know is their concern because it can't handle the traffic that it has now. So that solution is what you just alluded to. Thanks for letting me ask the question again. I just know that that's the thought that is on many of our minds. How do we deal with North Douglas Highway and trying to accommodate this development? Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. That was also probably my choice for a first question. I think Ms. Wall asked that better than I could. But my second question has to do with a few months ago, I'm the Assembly's liaison to Travel Juneau, and I remember we were sitting in a board meeting and there was a business owner there, and she was talking about how this would probably mean less traffic at her shop. So I'm just kind of wondering what discussions that you might have had with various businesses, with maybe the Downtown Business Association or the Chamber.
Through the Deputy Mayor, Assemblymember Kelly. First, I'd like to say that to Assemblymember Bryson's statement, 2 of my board members live on North Douglas, and we have a vested interest in making sure that we don't seriously disrupt people's lives out there. They make it very clear that we're going to do and operate and behave in a responsible fashion that makes people proud. We all live in the community, so when we go to the grocery store, people come and talk to us, right? And that's important. So specifically to your question, Assemblymember Kelly, Gold Belt is committed to working with local businesses, and by local businesses, I'm talking about the ones that are owned by the people that live here. And I've met with a lot of them, and they are welcome to have storefronts in our facility. Obviously, it's something that, they're going to have to pay rent on, but Gold Belt is not trying to recreate the Alaska Fudge Company. That's not in our best interest to squeeze out people's business. We believe that we can be additive, that there's an ability for our shareholder owners to be able to start new businesses, but also for existing owners, if they say, hey, we think a percentage of our business is going to be here, have a second shop, right? Like, we want you to be here, and we want to encourage and include everybody. And I think that's really important for the community to know. And I've talked to a lot of business owners downtown. We're the largest business owner downtown, right? We own the tram. We serve a number of people, you see, and we appreciate your support in allowing our business to do well and thrive. It is a tremendous employer, and we want to make sure that downtown is a vibrant place. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you both for coming tonight. We have tried to find this sweet balance between encouraging tourism, which we love to have in Juneau, and lowering impacts to community members. What would be your comments to the people that are concerned about growing tourism in Juneau?
Through Deputy Mayor, Mayor Weldon, that's something that drove our discussion to create this. One of the things that we've heard while the community was discussing how to have limits or different initiatives that were put before voters, what are the real concerns? And that's why we say a private destination. At Gold Belt, we believe we can pull some of those people from the greater community experience to allow this industry to be predictive and dependable. And if you remove some element of people from the community, you alleviate some of that congestion and the concern that we've all heard from people, from our neighbors, maybe from our family members. And we're able to put it in an area that's contained and allow it to thrive and be consistent. I think that's good for a visitor experience. I think that's good for the customer. I think that's good for us as residents, and it's good for Gold Belt, and it allows us to open up a new area of opportunity by supporting that significant utility development. So that's one of our focuses, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Ms. Euskandis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here tonight in that presentation. That's great. I really appreciate the grounding and the vision. Really excited to be starting the process. I don't have a lot of specific questions. I think I know in my relatively short time on the Assembly, I am aware of the history of us working together in that area because we are neighbors, and it's good to get along well with your neighbors. So how can we best do that? I think now this is a great having you here. Do you feel like the city is being a willing participant in that process, or just if you have any suggestions from your end, how we best work together to make sure that, we're not surprising each other along the way? Thanks.
Through the Deputy Mayor, Assemblymember Euskandis, we would like the opportunity to continue to pursue our development through the regular channels. We want to have a cooperative relationship. I really enjoy working with Katie. I've known her for a long time, and it's something that, is better when we're all very happy and cooperative together. We want to work with the city. Gold Belt wants to work with the city, and I think if we have the opportunity to cooperate and move forward in a reasonable time frame, that's something that's important for us too. Right? Because there are things that could happen that would derail this opportunity and set our community back another 30 years or 50 years, right? So we have to be cognizant of those realities and apply our opportunity and make it the best for our community because we have it and it may go away. Thank you.
I had a question on the different stages. I guess, at what stage would you anticipate, starting to operate or accept ships and do that type of thing? And I'm just misunderstanding what the different stages mean, but if you would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We don't have an answer for that. That's TBD, to be determined. We don't know. I can tell you that our intent internally when we discuss is that we want to have a facility that is ready to keep and hold customers. and not be a burden on the community. So that's our goal, and I believe that we can work together to achieve that goal.
Very good. And I guess a follow-up on that would just be, what would be the minimum infrastructure you would expect out there to begin operation? And maybe you just hit that, and I'm just asking the same question with different words. So anyway.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I still don't, it's to be determined. I don't know what is reasonable and what we can accomplish and how many people we expect to have, right?
Okay. Very good. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I believe you might have stated this publicly before, but I just wanted to double check. You're slated to build a couple new docks. How do you see this fitting in with the 5-ship cruise limit that's been negotiated?
Through the Deputy Mayor, Assemblymember Kelly, that's based on the participants of the 5-ship limit, right? It's their responsibility to honor that and follow that. And the potential customers that we've been talking to said they intend to honor it. So I don't anticipate it doing anything negative to add business. We anticipate this to be a mutually beneficial reduction of traffic and congestion that allows everybody to have a better experience in Juneau. You know, residents, visitors, businesses, everybody.
Thank you.
Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'd always heard the backside of Douglas was available for deep water ports. Is it potential for other types of ships to land at the ports? Have you looked at like freight ships or anything like that that could utilize a deep water port?
Through the chair, Assemblyman Bryson, thank you for the question. The answer is yes.
Madam Mayor.
So it will be important, as you folks said, to work together and form some kind of master plan. Because I see a little block on there that says sewage. You want to talk about that?
Certainly.
Who doesn't?
Sorry, who doesn't? Through the Deputy Mayor, Madam Mayor. So, you know, we know, through our cooperative discussions with the city that, and also being residents and users of the water and wastewater facility, that expansion, especially in that area, is not something that is supported by the existing city infrastructure. And so, again, with the goal to be additive, to improve the opportunity to develop residential housing out there, we believe we should develop wastewater treatment and potentially water for that area of the island. Now, how much further beyond that does it go? We haven't come to those terms. Do we have a private use? Do we have a utility? I mean, we don't have any of those details, but that's the intent. Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, just to augment the response thus far, Gold Belt is in fact linked to culture, and this is the coexistence. My father, when we were just kids, always told us, don't you eat any of that fish out of Gastineau Channel, because there wasn't a water or sewage treatment facility sufficient to take care of the need. And there's been a lot of effort to make sure that we have the city and Borough of Juneau has proper sewage disposal. So it's consistent with our culture to make sure we don't do anything but the prudent behaviors to manage that. Thank you.
I had a question if no one else does. You've seen Manager Kester's memo regarding some of the timeframes or I guess just some of the public process and things. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We're all in agreement that there needs to be master planning in the area as like a major, what is the term, a new growth area and kind of from the West Douglas conceptual plan. So just want to make sure, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we're not in agreement in that. This land specifically is not a new growth area, and we believe that we can start to move forward with the infrastructure under the current ordinance and everything that is approved with the current city rules. So we would be happy, Goldbelt would be happy to work with the city concurrently, but Goldbelt would not be happy to be sidelined and stopped altogether from development because the city wants to do something on its land or plan something around its land. We believe that the land plan that we have that Chair Eldemar referenced is still valid, and we've been pushing for it. And it's been something that's been referenced in every updated study and plan and community engagement. I remember sitting in these chambers in 2015 when we were talking about a new 10-year plan, and development of Douglas was on that. And so Goldbelt hasn't lost sight of that vision. And so, we would like to work with you, but not at the expense of the Tlingit people being able to develop Tlingit land.
Okay, thank you for that. And you feel the plan that you feel, is sufficient at this time is at the 1997 West Douglas conceptual plan?
Well, yeah, and we don't need to get into specifics about that. I think the point is that we're happy to work with you, so long as you allow us to continue to work towards our goals as well. If there is a confrontational situation where we're stopped from working or we're not allowed to move forward, I think we'd like to do things within the rules and be good neighbors, and we'd like you to allow us to continue to pursue our goals and dreams, because business ultimately does work faster than government, but we think we can be respectful of each other.
Very good, thank you. Other questions from the Assembly? Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think maybe just to follow up on that, but that's just more for my own clarity, because I think I'm following you. Earlier you said you have been very intentional about, you already have the Army Corps engineering, or, I've seen other things that already are more from the water side, what you need to do to be breaking land there. So am I correct? You're open to working if it's concurrent, but as far as based on your thought is that with the plans that are approved now, there shouldn't be any city approvals needed at this point that would stop from infrastructure, correct? But you're happy for the purpose of being a good neighbor to do those concurrently, just as the city plans for its land as well. Is that right?
Through the Deputy Mayor, Assemblymember Hughes-Candies, we want to work through the permitting process. So we believe the current permitting process allows us to move forward responsibly and work cooperatively with you. It's not our intent to bring bulldozers out there right now and start paving roads.
Right, and I didn't, if I stated it that way, I'm not trying to imply that. What you just said is that reiterates for me that with the permitting process. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Different topic. The other folks that we have heard concerns with is the whale watching boats. Are you going to allow them to come to your facility, or are you doing your own boats to do whale watching?
So through the Deputy Mayor, Madam Mayor, that is something we've also discussed, and we lump them into the same category of downtown business owners. We want to be able to support people to come and work at our docks. We believe that we are additive. We are not, reductive. So the fact that we have a new dock where people can go from, obviously someone's gonna have to pay a fee to dock there, right? But our goal is not to put any one operator out of business. And I know that there is some history there locally, and Goldbelt does some of that work too, but we do it with Allen Marine. And so there are ways for all of us to continue to have certainty and grow our businesses, and we're focused to make sure that happens.
And if I'm not saying anymore, but just one last question. When are you, I've seen different numbers and things, when are you hoping to, be open for business, I guess?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Smith. I'm not going to answer that question because we don't have a good answer. Last time I gave if everything went right, this is a date, people are like, oh my gosh, and everything isn't perfect, right? And that's not even an achievable date. So sometime soon, but not 2027, so.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Bryson, you have one? Yeah.
Just one last one. Out in that area, there are sections that the tree's already been dropped. What might be the next, like, visible thing that folks might see out in North Douglas? Because that might help the situation out if we expect something that we're going to see out there. What could be next?
You know, through the deputy mayor, Assembly Member Bryson, you know, we're going to do some wind wave studies in the winter. So we might see some barges or some boats out there doing some stuff. You know, we need to go through the permitting process to make sure that we can do the next kind of thing. And so before we, you know, start investing in new transformers to put at the facility, the electrical substation, we're going to go through some of those internal things. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of activity over the winter that'll spark comments or questions. But there's going to be activity here between us to make sure that we have all of those boxes checked so we can start doing some of that as soon as possible.
Madam Mayor, question.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pierre, you just brought up a question that everybody just probably never thought about. Are you going to be open during the winter, or you just be a summer, or you don't know yet?
So I'll open it up because I'm gesturing to Chair Eldemar because she's got some really cool ideas about wintertime activities. But ultimately what we're doing is we're building an accommodation that supports a summertime customer. And then we'd like to have year-round access in that facility, right? And that's where I wanted to pass the grand plans over to Chair Eldemar.
Okay, how do I dovetail that? Grand plans, yes, I would like to, well, you know what? Gold Belt is a for-profit corporation, and we do have a board of directors. Some are in the audience, and some shareholders are here, so I don't want to get ahead of myself and promising, but I like to dream and dream big. So in as much as we enjoy the summer tourism, I think we can do more. And I think the location in Douglas is a perfect opportunity. What do I mean? I think, my own nickel, so it was my own nickel. I went over to Germany, and they have those German Christmas markets. And I thought, what, you know, people seem to go there. Why? And I went there and I said, holy smokes, no wonder why. We should do a Christmas market in Juneau. And when the tourists are gone for the summer, why not? Our own community, we can get out and enjoy. Those can be different local businesses. They can have their goods and services for sale. It can be festive. Let's put up the lights. Who cares if it's dark? We can make the environment we want and enjoy it as a community. Now, if we have the docks there as well, why don't you board in from Hoona? Why don't you come in from Mangoon, Petersburg, or different locations? Come in and let's make this a year-round event. If Disney can have Halloween festivities on their properties, we could do the same things. Let's stop thinking just summer. I don't know about you, but a lot of people here in Juneau, Alaska get a little irritated when the last cruise ship's gone and everything downtown is shut. It looks like a ghost town. We are here. We're a forever company. We dream big. And I apologize to my fellow directors. We haven't decided, but you know, we dream big. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions from the assembly, so thank you very much for coming and sharing this and taking this time with us. You know, we do also in the agenda, we have a memo from the manager, and we are planning at, you know, talking more about this topic and possible master planning in our November 3rd meeting. Manager Kester, did you have anything that you wanted to discuss with us now, or do people have questions for her now? Again, we'll be talking about this again in November. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we are.
Thank you for your hospitality.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
We are through
Appreciate
with
the time.
that agenda item. Should we take a 10-minute break here, come back at 7:13 on a break. Are we ready, Ms. Hendricks? We'll bring us back to order 716. Next item is JPD Policy and Procedures Review. We have Chief Boffs with us. We have a memo in the packet. But I think our plan is just to have the chief come up and speak through it and go point by point. He did mention he would be open to taking questions at each point. And yeah, Manager Kester, anyone to kick it off, or do we send it to the chief? Very good. Chief, thank you for being here and for providing this memo to us. Please go ahead.
Sounds great. Thank you, sir. So I would like to begin by way of introduction that after the use of force incident on July 30th, we as a police department really, hit pause and wanted to take time and assess ourselves and ask some very hard questions. Top of the list is, why did this happen? Some of those questions I don't know that we'll ever find the answer to. It's pieces, it's parts, it's ideas, it's hypotheses. It's early on. Things are still under investigation. Things are still being wrapped up. So this is just kind of the initial roadmap, the initial assessment. I don't think this will be a once and done. I think this will be a long process over many months, maybe years. The other thing I would like to say, just by way of housekeeping, these bullet points are not in any specific order. They're completely random, so if you're looking for a pattern there and found one, let me know, because I did not find one. But with that, I would like to start with the medical piece of this, or one of the medical pieces of this incident. As you know, from watching the video, the person in this was rendered unconscious, and officers asked for medical. One of the first questions we've been asked as a department was, why wasn't that a priority medical response? Before I can answer that, the question is, what's the difference? Many people in the community don't know. So priority medical response versus a medical response is simply how fast does the ambulance and the fire truck come. The other part of that is what resources come. If it's a non-priority medical call, you get an ambulance. If it's a priority medical call, you get an ambulance and a fire truck. So many more resources respond. Priority medical call, they come lights and sirens. Non-priority, they drive the speed limit, they stop for red lights. Part of the dispatch process is to vet medical calls. So they go through something called emergency medical dispatching, where they ask questions and they critique the call, and they have basically a checklist to determine how important is this and how do we dispatch this. Many people, average people, don't have much medical knowledge at all. So when they call 911, they might be reporting a heart attack that turns out to be the stomach flu. And dispatch goes through these checklists so they can assess how important, what type of medical incident is this, what resources do we send. That's what they also do for officers, or have done for officers. So when an officer says, I have an unconscious person, I need an ambulance, dispatch goes through this EMD questionnaire with the officers. That's not good, because the officers are busy. They don't always have time to answer those questions. They don't always have the opportunity even to fill dispatch in on what's going on. As we have looked at this, and as we've looked at the requirements of medical calls, which that's overseen by medical doctors, there's ways that we can short circuit that system or shortcut the system. So one of those is, if an officer has somebody who's unconscious, either through use of force or after they're taken into custody and they lose consciousness, we're going to skip forward in the process and just dispatch it as a priority medical call. There's not great guidance from the medical world on this, but they accept that, which is what we want. We want the medical community to support us in doing this. So that's been a big policy shift and a big policy change for us. When we look at this, this captures not only use of force incidents, but we've had in the past, people have overdosed on things like fentanyl or other drugs. They use the drug, we arrest them for some reason, they're in the back of a patrol car and they lose consciousness. We need help right away when that happens. Excited delirium is another example of that. And excited delirium is brought on generally when somebody's restrained. That's a medical condition, but we need help right away. Do you need,
I saw you, Ms. Edkis, and I was going to let the chief finish up, but yeah, finish his thought. Continue, yeah.
I kind of have to get in right there.
you bet.
When I was reading this note, actually excited delirium did jump out at me. And I'm certainly not a medical professional, but my understanding is that is a diagnosis that is no longer accepted by any major medical association and is kind of widely regarded at this point as pseudoscience. So I saw one place in your regulations that it exists, but as you're doing this regulatory overhaul, is that something you're looking at eliminating?
So fair question, fair statement. I would say that's much in, people smarter than I are very much debating that very thing right now. But what I do know is that this does happen in the context of we have somebody who's in custody and they lose consciousness for whatever reason. I am not going to make the diagnosis. I'm not going to guess and say, here's why. But either way, we have to respond to that and we have to respond appropriately. So I'll accept that that might not be the best example because it is being debated, but that's still something we have to navigate and manage.
Follow up.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I definitely, loss of consciousness, priority medical call, that makes total sense to me. I would just flag that term and diagnosis because it does have not only pseudoscience, but a very problematic and frankly racist background. And so that would definitely be something I would flag for the term being removed and from our police procedures. So thank you.
Fair enough. And our actual policy does not include that term, to my knowledge. Actually, any more questions on that? If not, I'll move on to the next
Any
bullet.
questions on the priority medical response piece? Not, oh, Ms. Hall.
And I guess I'm viewing this through the lens of a nurse, but, I was pretty alarmed that it wasn't more of a, immediately we need someone here now. This man was knocked unconscious. But having said that, the officer that made the call didn't witness the takedown. And so, but to me, that was like, oh my gosh, why did it take so long for someone to get there? And especially given his breathing pattern throughout much of the time while they were waiting. So, yeah, anything to provide more training for officers on how to make that determination would be wonderful.
And I'll capture training in a minute here, but
Thank you.
I do want to say that's part of why we put out this directive is to simplify the process. Rather than have a expectation that an officer makes a medical diagnosis and a medical assessment, somebody's unconscious, you just ask for priority medical. So that's part of the logic behind this shift. And as you observed, he doesn't necessarily know why this individual is unconscious. He was occupied with other things at the time. So what information is he lacking? So just to simplify it, it's a priority medical response.
Chief,
I will,
please continue.
all right, thank you. The next bullet point here is arrest control tactics, training, and policies. Without going through this sentence by sentence, I think it's very important to recognize that our policy trumps our training and trumps what we're taught. That's a big distinction that we can do better on training our officers on. We receive a lot of training. At the AST Academy, they teach a wide variety of tactics that we don't necessarily follow through or teach more training on. It's better to really develop a few tactics and a few things that you can get very proficient at versus 25 different things that you're not going to be proficient at. So our training is very focused and very pinpointed. However, we can do a much better job of saying, this is training, but policy says, here's when you can apply this. And so we are working through that. We have taken a lot of time to look at our training first and decide what are we actually going to train on, what's more important there, and then how do we align our policies with that. I'll talk about policy in a few minutes, but I do think we have very robust policies in the world of arrest control. The tactic that was employed that day is not something that we support. It's not something we endorse. It's not something we train on, but it is something that is learned at the basic academy in Sitka. So that creates some challenges. We have to accept that that's taught by somebody else, and then we have to navigate. Our policy says, no, we don't use this. So our policy needs to be more clear on that, and we are definitely working on clarity and providing good guidance there. That's also a training point. If you learn something that we don't like, we have to train you to not use it. I will say in this specific case, with this officer, he was a lateral hire. This was not taught at the lateral academy. This is something that he learned elsewhere. I don't know where. I know that's a question that's still out there. I can't answer that completely and wholly right now, in part because of the investigation. But that's not something that he was taught at the lateral academy or was taught at our department.
Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here tonight, Chief Boss. So when I read that, I was like floored that the officers are learning stuff at academy that don't necessarily align with our policies, and I understand policy trumps training, trumps whatever would be after that. So I guess my question to you is, in thinking about this, it almost seems like that makes me worry a little bit about like what else are our new hires who are not lateral, who are coming up, what else, I don't know how much you've reviewed what they get at academy, how much else might they be getting at academy that Juneau almost needs like a secondary 2-week power Juneau Academy that's like, now forget about all those things because we don't do those here. But if you ever go to another part of Alaska, maybe they do those there. I don't know. And I understand why we send people to academy versus Juneau having its own academy. So could you talk a little bit about that? And yeah, just, I can get more specific, but I think you see my concern. So if you could address it.
I would be happy to, and I will tell you, I have asked that very question many times. You know, what is taught that we don't know, that we don't agree with? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that wholly yet because we're still asking the question. We're still reviewing, we're still trying to gather syllabus and look at that and take a really deep dive into it. By way of how do we navigate it? We currently have, we call it a mini academy. It's about a month long. It's what we start officers with. Every officer, whether they have experience or no experience that comes to Juneau, goes through our mini academy. So they spend 4 weeks learning our tactics, our standards, our expectations, going through policy, reviewing some basics on arrest control, and then they go to the Sitka Academy. It's one of the changes that we're discussing and still determining what will it look like is a before and after component of that. Currently, we just do the before. And I think it's good. It's great. It prepares them for the academy, but I think we need a follow-up and have identified we need to spend some time after they come back of, here's what you learned, now here's what you can actually do, here's what is acceptable.
Mayor Walden.
Thank you. Since it's in Sitka and we can't do a ton with what they teach, have you reached out to them to express your concerns about this particular, well, I don't know what it's called, a takedown, whatever?
Yes, ma'am. That's a difficult conversation, and I think we're still navigating that. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of academy options in Alaska. So that's the other thing we're looking at is there any alternative? And if not, we have to navigate this and do it very carefully.
Mr. Kelly, then Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you. I think Madam Mayor's question is very much related to mine. I guess being a stakeholder, somebody who receives, an organization that receives training from the Sitka Academy, do they give us any opportunity to discuss curriculum or adjust curriculum specific to us and our needs?
Formally, no. There's a few moving parts there. So Alaska has the Alaska Police Standards and Council, which oversees and governs training. and they set minimum standards. Those standards are pretty broad, and they require training for this amount of time in this topic. So we have good conversations with APSC, but that applies to the entire state. That's not unique to Juneau. And then each academy has to navigate those standards and develop curriculum to support those standards. So that's the overall process. Formally, we don't have a lot of say in that.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Euskandis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question just on, I imagine there are techniques that you would use, policy would say that was wildly disproportionate in this instance, as this one was, but that you maybe in a life and death situation or another officer is being attacked and you were trying to get that person off of them, then that would be okayed. Are officers, I don't know how you do your training, and that's something for us to talk about offline, but do you feel like the officers, and as a result of this process, have a good sense of starting with kind of your lowest levels, their look at them tactic by tactic, and if you asked an officer, they would know, yes, a tactic like that is really only for this situation. Do you have that confidence?
So that's a complex question. I will do my best to answer it, but you might have to repeat some of that for me.
They'll all be like that. I'm sorry.
But the short answer is yes, I have confidence that our officers know when to apply force and what degree of force to apply when necessary. The complex part of that is using force is not a step or escalating process. As we look at force and as the courts have reviewed force, we are allowed to use a level of force just above what the person is using, but we don't have to start at the bottom and work our way up through a tiered system to get to a certain level. So we can engage kind of at any level that's appropriate based off the level of resistance or the actions of the suspect. So an easy example of that, if I respond to a school where there's a person shooting at children, I shouldn't be required to pull out a taser and try that first or go hands-on first. I'm immediately going to a deadly force response. And the courts have vetted that for decades and said this is the best way to apply force as it relates to subjects who are resisting. Now, it's much easier to explain that than to apply that. I am confident that our officers understand that, but it doesn't always work that cleanly in real life.
Please continue, Chief.
Thank you. Next, I will tackle de-escalation. De-escalation, I would like to just tell you, I think this is one of our strengths as a police department. Our officers do an amazing job every day of talking down people, de-escalating situations, and navigating conflict. If you have taken the time to watch the body camera video of this specific incident, you can see two different extremes. You can see one officer who does an amazing job of de-escalating this situation and one officer who doesn't. I think our staff are incredibly good at de-escalating. That doesn't make us perfect, and that doesn't mean we don't need to work on it. I also would compare it to driving. As you get your license, you get proficient at driving, but many states are recognizing that as you get to some point, 65, 70, 75, 80, your driving skills are going down, and many states are having driver refresher courses for older drivers, just to give them back to the basics. That's similar of how I look at this. We do this every day. We are very proficient at it, but it's not a bad idea to just take a step back and say, let's go back to the foundations. Let's refresh and review and make sure we are doing it right and doing it in line with best practices and make sure that we are applying this well. So that is our intent here. As we are doing kind of this refresher course and building that out with our staff, one of the things that's already come up is this idea that we're working on of taking some crisis negotiation skills, which is about a week-long basic training class. Can we shrink that down into one day and add some de-escalation techniques to it and make a one-day, 8-ish hour course that really capitalizes on all the good stuff from those two courses? from de-escalation and crisis negotiation. We are actually excited to be putting this together, not just for our officers. I think as we roll this out, we will be trying to do this with dispatch as well. I think it would be great for dispatch to take this on. I don't know if I'm allowed to do it, but you all are welcome to join us for this training too. If you can carve 8 hours out of your busy days, we'd love to see you there. I know that might be a long ask, but the invite's out there. Also, just to kind of mush this in with the next bullet point, as I was looking at de-escalation and kind of de-escalation refreshers, I stumbled across, in the private business world, many businesses, especially customer service oriented and telemarketing oriented, track how their employees do de-escalation and what works and what doesn't work. There are many basic tactics. We teach those, but is it worth teaching something that we never use that doesn't work? To date, I haven't found a law enforcement agency that does this, but we want to try. We are looking at this saying we track, use of force, and what force we use works, and we do all kinds of training based off that. But what about de-escalation? How can we take the data of what we do every day and say this worked really well? Let's encourage our officers to do that. This has never worked for us. Let's not spend time teaching and training on that. So we're not sure what this looks like yet. This is a brand new, fresh idea for law enforcement, but we're excited for this. I'm very excited for this because I think this will give us a lot of good, solid data to look at and say, not only are we winning and de-escalating on a frequent basis, here's what's working and here's how it's working and here's how we can teach new people that and carry that forward as we do our own refreshers. I don't view the de-escalation training refresher as a once and done. I think that's something we need to build on every year, but I'd like to do that with good concrete data from Juneau. I can look at data from other communities, even though nobody else is collecting it, but I want to see what works here in Juneau with our community and our residents here.
Thank you, Chief. Looking good to continue.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you. Medical training. So as we look at basic standards for medical training, they're actually fairly low for officers, if you will. We essentially need to know CPR and basic first aid. That's not a super high standard, honestly. We add to that at Juneau PD, we teach our officers how to use Narcan or Noxalone, which is a opioid reversing agent. We're seeing more and more fentanyl-based products with other things added that are resistant to Noxalone and Narcan, which is a challenge for us. We're also teaching our officers how to use AEDs. In addition to that, many of our officers, I can't say all, but I think most of our officers have gone through tactical combat or tactical emergency casualty care, which is really focused on major trauma. That type of training is focused on stopping the bleeding, head injuries, head wounds, chest cavity wounds, femoral bleeds, anything like that. That's really come out of many of our active shooter events or similar mass casualty events where simple things like tourniquets can save lives or preserve life long enough to get somebody to a higher medical care. So happy to answer questions on that.
Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment. I think the more you can push that last bit, I think that's a great idea for most officers to make that.
Ms. Hall.
I would guess you are probably working closely with CCFR and Dr. Peterson maybe on suggestions for what additional training might be helpful for the officers.
Yes, ma'am. And to take it a step further, there's a course, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a higher level of first aid. It's not an EMT course. We're exploring the feasibility of something like that or something similar. I don't know if that's practical or cost effective yet, but we're definitely exploring other options.
Thank you, Chief. Let's continue.
My next one is just kind of a broader assessment of policies. I think it's easy to get very, very focused on just our use of force policies, but what other policies are impacted and are deficient, or deficient is probably the wrong word, inadequate. It's a great opportunity for me to just highlight we are an accredited agency. We just received our accreditation a couple weeks ago, and that's a high standard. That's a very high standard. Deputy Chief Campbell's in the audience here. He is the master behind our accreditation. If you want to know how much work it is, ask him. I'm very grateful for everything he's done on that. But to meet this standard is very impressive. There are very few agencies in Alaska that are accredited at any level. And we are the largest agency in Alaska that's accredited. To that end, that doesn't make us perfect, like I said before. There have already been a few policies that we've looked at that we can tweak and make better. One of those is our use of deadly force. As we read that policy, it's very specific to an officer using a firearm to apply deadly force. That's too specific. And that actually worked against us a little bit in this instance, because while this was not deadly force, questions of when does the officer go on administrative leave were not answered clearly, because our policy was addressing the use of firearms, not the use of any force, or it's possible that an officer could use their vehicle to harm somebody or injure somebody. Our policy doesn't capture that well. So those are policy tweaks that we're addressing, things that we look at. When do we trigger admin leave? How does that look like? How does that work? Is being flushed out better. I don't have any other specific examples yet, but those are the policies that we've highlighted, and we're definitely digging and reviewing more of those. So.
Thank you, Chief. Continue.
All right, thank you. Part of our accreditation standard is that we annually review all of our use of force incidents. And just to kind of explain that a little bit better, when an officer uses force beyond putting handcuffs on somebody, they have to complete a report. And that report is very simple, it's very basic, but it goes over what was the level of resistance and what was your response, essentially. Most of it's check boxes, small narrative of here's what happened, here's the nature of the call, here's what I encountered. If there's any injuries or any strikes or anything like that, there's a little diagram where you would mark as an officer, here's where I struck the person, or here's where they were injured, here's where the taser probes hit them, things of that nature. Part of accreditation requires that every year we take all of those and we do an analysis of them, which we do. But we only do that every year. We would like to be able to do that in closer to real time. To that end, we do have software that we have. We are trying to test it out to make sure it will work and roll it out, but that will give us the ability to do more analysis faster. The point of that is if there are good, bad, or otherwise behaviors from either our officers or patterns of use of force, we can identify those more quickly and recognize problems. I see this tying in hand in glove with tracking de-escalation tactics as well. This is a whole picture thing, not just a use of force, de-escalation force. This is all of it together. How can we track our successes, our failures, our goods, our bads? How do we make our training adequate for everything? De-escalation, use of force, and everything in between. So that is the intent here. We are working on this. This will take time to build this out. I would guess a 3 to 6 month process before we're fully up and there, but that is our goal.
Mrs. Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That excites me. I think that would be really useful to have more, real-time data than annually. Good to see trends just among the department, of course, but will this track as you're imagining this, will this track it by officer as well? So, if you see something repeatedly coming up, that you might have a conversation with the officer.
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. First of all, I think I would like to say that I am impressed by the department's response to this incident, in that this feels very much like a growth mindset. Something happened, we didn't like what happened. What can we learn from it? And I really like that that this sounds like it's going to be something that you're going to be collecting data on and working on for a while. I feel like this is not something I hear about or see very often. I also, while I also guess I also want to take the opportunity to say that I'm also impressed that you're not just doing this in an email. You're briefing this in the full public eye, with transparency, with the press in the room, and I don't think you had to do that. And I think I find this amount of transparency impressive, and I just wanted to relay that while I had the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Chief, you can continue.
Thank you. Next, you've heard me talk about this one a few times, but we are continuing to move forward with the ABLE program, which is Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. The backbone of the ABLE program is enabling officers to intervene and accept intervention for a variety of things. But if you go to their website, they highlight officer misconduct, prevent career-ending mistakes, and promote officer wellness and health. I would just say anecdotally, in my past life, I've been through this training and I've watched firsthand officers intervene with other officers, and that radically change and save careers. I am wholeheartedly invested in this program. I think it's great. It ties in perfectly with our wellness program, and I do firmly feel that this is the kind of program that prevents what happened on July 30th from happening again. This is something that empowers and enables at every level an officer to say, hey, I can tell you're having a bad day. Maybe you should take the day off. Or maybe it's a situation of, hey, stop, walk away right now. Whatever that looks like, this program, I think, will be incredible. I think our department's excited for it. I think it will be the crown on our wellness program. We will be the only agency in Alaska, excuse me, to do this. Nobody else in Alaska is doing this program, and this is the point of the spear, if you will, in law enforcement right now. So happy to answer questions on that one.
Thank you, Chief. Continue.
This is probably the most frequent question I've been asked, is about our hiring standards. And there's been an implication that we have bad hiring standards or that something slipped through the cracks. And I just want to say point blank, I think we have some of the highest hiring standards in law enforcement, and I am confident that something did not slip through the cracks. I have read Officer LeBlanc's background investigation and application process, I don't know how many times. I'm not sure I could quote the entire thing verbatim because it's about this thick. We invest a massive amount of time and resources in researching every applicant that comes through the door, and our standards are very high. And we, and me specifically, are not going to accept a warm body, just to accept a warm body. I would much rather have short staffing issues and good quality people than hire bad officers and be fully staffed. We remain uncompromising on our standards. Specifically with Officer LeBlanc, I will tell you, his background was very impressive. As a candidate, he's an impressive officer. I firmly believe he's a good officer who made a very bad mistake on that day. When I go through his background, many people have asked, he had this use of force lawsuit 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago. He was exonerated by the district court. He was exonerated by the appellate court. That's tells me he did his job and did it well, and the courts agreed. So to that end, we have made changes in our hiring process, but not recently. When I first came, one of the first changes I made about a year ago is a different company to do our psych screening for us, or psychological backgrounds. The company we had initially was very difficult to work with. They would change standards if we asked them to. A lot of other challenges there. We use an organization now that I think is top tier. They are, by many people, much smarter than me, considered the best in the country. And they've written most of the standards that other companies use for psychological screening. We've also changed our basic written test standard. We did this one more recently at the beginning of July. Our previous standard was you pass the written test by 70%. Looking at our hiring process and our applicants, everybody who scored between 71 and 80 or 79 either doesn't work here, never made it through the academy, or they lasted less than a year. So why do we even invest time in hiring those people? So you've got to score an 80% or higher on a written test now. Simple tweak, but higher quality candidates. We've also changed a little bit of how we navigate our backgrounds. So we have more thorough, more in-depth background investigations. Again, I'm very confident that we do a great job with our hiring process. Happy to answer questions on that one.
Mrs. Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping you can characterize a little bit more about instances like Officer LeBlanc when there is a use of force, so much so that it rises to the level of court cases and appeals, et cetera. Obviously, you want to have some nuance there, and you want to feel confident that you are doing your own level of research there. You can't go off one Google story, probably, right? Because I got lots of Google stories about me. But maybe characterize what happens when you say that he had an impressive background as an officer. So from that point, what are you looking for? What are the red flags you're looking for? And talk about what you did that made you confident that that wasn't a red flag.
Certainly. So with lateral hires especially, we reach out to every agency that they've worked at, and we ask for all the records that we can get. That's a little bit challenging because every state has different laws that navigate that. Some states say, here you go, here's everything. Some states say, well, we need different things, or we can only supply these things. But one of the things we ask for is every internal investigation that they've ever had, give us as much on that as you can. Good, bad, or otherwise, we want it all. We want to review employment evaluations. So annual evaluations, some departments do quarterly, some do semi-annual. We would like to see every evaluation and look at every evaluation. We look at any case history. So for example, a civil lawsuit, case history. We will reach out to coworkers and ask them, can you tell us about this person? Give us information on their character. Have you seen them do good things, bad things? Have you ever seen them use excessive force? We ask all those questions as we go through it. So in a case like this, we are looking at more than Google. Our background investigator actually read the entire criminal case file on this. I'm sorry, civil case file on this and the court rulings and wrote a briefing on that. We looked at all of the evaluations. So all of that is very good for this specific officer. All of that says he is a great cop. That's the kind of thing I get excited about when I look at a background check. Is this is going to be an asset for our agency.
Thanks.
Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to follow up on that thread, we've talked about how Juneau Police Department has pretty high standards and higher than a lot of other police departments do. When you're getting a background check and you're talking to other police departments and people who work at other police departments, how do you vet, what their standards are in relation to kind of what we're looking for?
We actually run into that often. And I think it's very, very quickly apparent as we look at lateral applicants. I can usually tell from reading a application that there's a problem in their background or there's going to be issues. I think as we start talking to other agencies, One example of that is recently we had a candidate where the other agency was like, we don't have any files. We can't share anything with you. That's a red flag for us. Even telling me over the phone, it's a good employee is better than I can't tell you anything. So we look at things like that, and I think that carries a lot of weight. If an employer says, I have no comments, you're probably not going to get a job with us.
Mrs. Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I think you're starting to get into with that response to the meat of what I'm looking for. Could you characterize what it's like when and I'm speaking laterals at this point, where you're talking with someone and you do see that, I guess just if you just started with a few, but if you could give me like the comprehensive things that make us do walk away, are there things, or even officer involved incidents, what are the things when there is an officer involved incident in the past, or sorry, use of force incident in the past, what makes you walk away? Is it a combination of those things, or help me understand that?
So for my clarity, basically what you're asking is if we are looking at a lateral and they have used force to some degree in the past that's been concerning, how do we say that's okay or not okay?
Yeah, I think so. You've done a good job describing what it is that you do to vet. So is one red flag enough to walk away, or if you could talk about that process, because it sounds like I think I have a good sense of what you do to look into it.
So in general, I would say we kind of have three criteria when we look at a background for different elements in the background. We have what we would say no concerning information, and then disqualifying information. So when we have disqualifying information, an easy example of that would be you are a felon, you've been convicted of felony crimes, you can't carry a firearm, you can't be an officer. And believe it or not, there are officers who have committed felonies who are still employed, and so that's something that we do see not often, but it does come up. Concerning information is a broad category, and that's where it gets more challenging. So if we look at something and see that maybe there was use of force in the past that was questionable, that's concerning information. So our initial response could be, let's dig into this more, or are we concerned enough that we're just done? Or are there multiple categories where we see concerning information? I would say if one person or one category has concerning information, that's not a hard stop necessarily. But if I see multiple categories with concerning information, we're probably finished at that point. So that's a broad overview. Use of force, again, we depend a lot on internal investigations. And then any kind of third-party investigations. So for Juneau example, if we have an officer-involved shooting, there's a criminal investigation that goes to Office of Special Prosecutions. They come up with a declination letter saying that they're going to decline charges, or they prosecute. We get copies of all of that if we're investigating or looking at another officer as a background investigation. So if those don't exist, we probably wouldn't hire them based on the nature of the use of force.
Okay, thanks. That helps round it out. I appreciate it.
Ms. Atkinson.
Sorry, Ms. Huskandes and I are like tag teaming at this point. So based off of talking about like third-party investigations and that sort of thing, does it tend to be like, oh, they found no wrongdoing, therefore we're good? Or is it like, a little more nuanced than that? Because using our own state as an example, we don't often prosecute in those sorts of cases here. And that maybe doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't something concerning done. So is it just like, well, the court says it's fine, or the state says it's fine, therefore we're good? Or do you do a little more of a deep dive into it in those more concerning cases?
I guess I would back up, and I wouldn't even say the more concerning cases. I would say every case that we come across, every piece of paper that we can get our hands on related to that case, we do, and we read. As I mentioned before, this officer's background check was this thick. I read every page in that. Our background investigator spent probably many times reading every page in that. So even though, yes, we get one statement from a prosecutor saying we're not prosecuting this, we still read the entire case file or as much of it that we can get our hands on.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, I think we talked a little bit about what's in the record of the police department, and that you're reviewing all of that. And then I think in the beginning of this conversation, we all also talked about we don't just use Google. But is there some in between, in addition to looking at department records, are you also looking at media records and media reports and anything else that that might be available?
Yes, so we look at social media, we look at media. Typically, and I don't want to let you know all my secrets, but every application that comes in before we move forward and even say, yeah, you move to the next step, we Google their name. That's a super simple screening process. It's amazing how many people we Google and I look and see that they're under investigation for something that I want nothing to do with. So yes, we look at that multiple times, multiple layers. So yes.
Very good. Please proceed, Chief.
Thank you. So I guess I want to kind of couch this next one with recognizing that the individual that was hurt was a Klingit Haida member. And as we look at this incident, you know, we are a population here in Juneau where about 25% of our population is Klingit Haida members. Rough numbers, I don't know the exact number, but I think as an agency, we need to be conscientious and care for our population and understand our population. I think that's crucial. I don't think this was a racially motivated incident, but that's still under investigation. So I'm going to say that cautiously right now. But that doesn't alleviate us of the responsibility of working to have a better relationship with Klingit Haida and educate ourselves and our officers on their culture and their people and understanding them better. I would also say that Klingit Haida is very excited about this, this opportunity to work with us. Many of the conversations I've had with them on what should this look like and how do we make this happen have been just exciting. There's so many things on both sides of the fence that I'm learning and they're learning, and it's been great. It's been a great opportunity. What this looks like is still an unknown for all of us, I think. I'm having a couple more coffee meetings later this week related to this topic, and it's just kind of it's a learning process, but we also want to make sure that we do this very deliberately and very carefully, and kind of linking both of my last bullet points together. But we want to do this in a way that is not offensive towards Klingit Haida members and not offensive towards the police department and not offensive towards the rest of our community, but in a way that is wholesome and where we can all come away saying, this was a great experience, we've grown a lot together, and we are stronger because of it. So to that end, we are doing this very, very carefully, and we are baby stepping our way through this process. There's not examples out there really to follow, and we both recognize that. We were both wanting to build a stronger relationship at every level, not just at the leadership level between myself and the Klingit Haida leadership, but at all levels within the department and within their community. And we are still figuring out what exactly that looks like. I appreciate your patience as we navigate this. Please accept my word for it that we are moving forward. We just don't know what it's going to look like yet. But I think we are all excited for this conversation. We are all excited to see what the end product will be.
Mrs. Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I'm, Chief Boss, I would be right to expect that at some point, this is going to be a community involved, like a community meeting, or am I wrong to think it might look like that and it might look like something else? Am I right to say it's a larger effort and it's more than a community meeting?
I would say yes, it's a larger effort. The community meeting piece, I've actually had some really good conversations just on Friday about that. And what we want to care for in the community meetings, we don't want to create an antagonistic environment for either entity. And so as we've talked through that, the question is, do we start out smaller and grow to a bigger thing, or what does this look like? So the intent is whole community, yes. What does that look like? We have no idea yet.
Okay, I'm following you now. Thanks.
Mr. Bryson?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Chief, thank you for coming and giving us this info tonight. I know the answer, but I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this question. What percentage of Juneau police officers live in the area that they police versus what other police agencies might have down south? Like what percentage a community might have of officers living in the community? Could you just maybe speak to Juneau's percentage versus what a down south community might experience? I think you'll be able to help me with this.
The easy answer is in Juneau, 100% of our staff live in Juneau. This is where we go to school. This is where we shop for groceries. This is where we live our lives. We are on planes with our neighbors. I was talking to another police chief this morning who was telling me he was on a flight earlier this week with an individual he had arrested. It's the same for us. And so as we work with our community, we recognize that we are engaging with people that we will see at the grocery store. We will see them at school events. We will see them walking the streets downtown.
Mr. Bryson?
Knowing that Juneau has 100% of its officers living in the community, could you maybe just speak briefly to how, you've kind of already hinted towards it, how that differentiates the policing level that we need versus, and I think you've kind of already started on that, but if you could just elaborate a little bit more.
I will try. The comparison to down south, I think many officers choose not to live in the communities they work in because they are trying to avoid seeing the people that they interact with every day. And that is a very different kind of policing. That is far less personal. It's not relationship-based. It's not community-based. Actual numbers, I have no idea. It might be 20%, it might be 100%. I have no idea.
Thank you, Chief. That the sentiment that you expressed here was kind of what I wanted to make sure. And I'm sure some of the older assembly members, I know that we've said this out here in the dais, but since this was the discussion, I wanted to make sure that you spoke about how 100% of our police force lives in our community. And that is an anomaly in the police world, is my understanding. Thank you for taking the time to talk about it.
I have a couple anecdotal stories in closing, if I may.
Sure.
I know a few weeks ago, there was a gentleman here who talked at the public comment about an incident he had with some of our officers in May, and he felt it was a negative experience. But I want to tell you another side of that story that wasn't shared. And I think this is very important because it represents our officers. So that day, there was a conflict between that individual and three of our officers. That night, one of our officers was at a restaurant on his own time, not in uniform, with his family, and he saw that individual at the restaurant. And he took the time, he walked over, he said, "Hey, could I buy you a beer?" That individual said yes, bought him a beer, shook his hand, explained the situation. They had a great conversation. That also doesn't happen in many communities in this country. That's next level policing. That is amazing. Recently, very recently, we had an officer who contacted a female party, found out she was wanted for a warrant. Her vehicle was out of gas on the side of the road. He explained to her that she had a warrant for her arrest. He helped push her car to the gas station, helped her get gas in her car, helped her count the change in her cup holder in her car to make sure she had enough money to post bond before he arrested her and took her to jail. That is Juneau PD. That's the officers we have here. That is not something you'll find in most communities in America. And I just want to highlight, we have an amazing staff. We have amazing officers. We have amazing dispatchers. We have amazing civilian staff through and through. You truly do have a great police department here. And I know I'm the chief, so I'm biased, but I've worked many other places, and Juneau PD is an amazing place. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you, the thoughtfulness and efforts of you and your team, related to how to grow and learn and heal from this incident. And every time I learn more about JPD, I'm typically I'm always more impressed. So we appreciate what you and your team and the whole staff, everyone does for us. So thank you very much for this and all you do. Thank you. Okay. Just had a break.
Hour ago.
8:15, you have 4 minutes. Let's go. for abiding by that short break. Just wanted to keep us moving. We are back. Item 3, U.S. Coast Guard housing for home porting tourists. We have a memo. It has a desired recommendation from staff, but Manager Kester.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Just to briefly summarize, we have been meeting with Coast Guard leadership and Coast Guard staff here in Arctic District on what their needs are for home porting the stores, knowing that housing is a major obstacle and that there's a high priority for the community to, bring that ship home. So we do have some information on what the Coast Guard is looking for in housing needs, and then this is based on their assessment of the acceptability of our housing stock. You'll notice that 32.6% of our non-mobile home rental stock is considered to be inadequate for housing, and I experienced this when I was in Homer too. The kind of more homesteady built homes in Alaska don't always meet the rigorous standards for the Coast Guard, which is certainly understandable. They do like to live in the community, right? I mean, these are our friends and neighbors who like to live in the community, but they do anticipate needing some Coast Guard designated housing for the home porting of the stores. And that's 48 units for families and 23 units for unaccompanied service members. And those are not final numbers. That is just kind of their initial assessment. I think, I will certainly be reaching out to them with more information about our housing stock and our housing assessment that says we're about 1,500 units short for our current population. So again, that really just gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So the Coast Guard doesn't have the ability to just, I guess I should take that back. They may have the ability to just go build houses, but that just hasn't been a successful model for them in the past. And, for the same reason, we don't go out and build a bunch of houses. It's not what we do. But they do have the authority to guarantee a commitment to a developer for a lease. And so what they are looking at doing is offering up the opportunity for a guaranteed lease that a developer could then take to a bank for financing. And eventually that would then become designated Coast Guard housing. As part of this kind of arrangement, they really like to work with existing developments. So rather than like a development that's only for Coast Guard, plugging into a broader development. And of course, we have that motivation too, because we have a housing need in Juneau. So the more units that we can build, if Coast Guard commitment to leasing some units helps leverage additional units, that's an overall win for our community. Their kind of process that they're looking at is issuing a request for information of the development community, and nothing binding, but something that, and we know the request for information process because we've been through that recently when it comes to development, but that request for information will then allow them to understand what can our development community provide for them within the community. And there are a number of permitted developments that have capacity to provide that housing. In addition to that, I am working with the Coast Guard on the potential of leveraging CBJ-owned property for that development. And there's two parcels in particular that we've been discussing. We talked about 5 different properties that CBJ owns and have been kind of just working through the pros and cons of all of them with Coast Guard and with the Lands Division, and landed on Peterson Hill and Telephone Hill as 2 CBJ-owned properties that could be leveraged for additional development with the Coast Guard. And I'll talk a little bit about the first one, that's Peterson Hill, and you see a zoomed in image of the Peterson Hill development there. I'm sorry, I'm on page 9 of the packet. So road 1 there is zoned for multifamily development. However, you cannot do any additional development in Peterson Hill without Road 2 being developed, an access road. That's because for emergency services, you need a secondary access. This access is going to be very expensive. So anything we can do to develop the Road 1 and Road 2 will then allow us to, in the future, develop Road 3, and there's about 12 acres above this diagram that you don't see that also then would be CBJ property available for development. So there's some, vision out here where we assist a developer with some utility and road infrastructure, leverage maybe some Coast Guard housing, and continue to develop Peterson Hill. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think continuing to have those conversations with Coast Guard, it could be a good idea. And the second property would be Telephone Hill. You're intimately familiar with Telephone Hill, but Telephone Hill has an opportunity to provide a lot of multi-unit housing that's really conveniently located across from the subport. So for those service members that maybe don't have a car, maybe they're single, close to public transportation, close to work, it could provide a really attractive option. Telephone Hill also needs development, even though we do have funding secured for site preparation. The road still needs to be realigned, and there's utilities that still need to be installed there. So those are both opportunities to kind of leverage additional development. The vision that we've just been talking about with Coast Guard staff is developing some type of MOU between CBJ and the Coast Guard that talks about these properties, that talks about kind of what the CBJ would be willing to help with for a developer, what our process is, that then when they issue an RFI, they could refer to. So we would just be kind of like a tangent to the RFI process, and a developer could say, hey, I really think that, using Peterson Hill allows me to make this development happen, and this is what it would look like. And then, that decision, of course, would be, the development decision still lies with the Coast Guard, and there's still a separate relationship with the developer and CBJ that would have to come out of that. But it's a way to, put something on paper that allows both the Coast Guard and the development community to consider that option. I don't have a ton of details fleshed out just because these meetings came together late last week, and knowing that we wouldn't have another committee the whole until November, I wanted to bring this to you today so that I could get direction from you to keep working on this MOU and really just keep this concept alive of that potential partnership between really CBJ, Coast Guard, and the development community. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Manager Kester. Questions from the Assembly? Ms. Huskiandes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Manager. That sounds good. I think my only question is I'm trying to figure out make sure I have the right relationship to how it fits into what CBJ can offer. So obviously we're leveraging, that's good, that gets us something on paper. If I am a developer in Juneau listening to this right now, and I have something that's currently zoned where I was thinking this Coast Guard's really going to want to use my undeveloped lots, which are perfect for Coast Guard family lots, would the RFI still be written in a way that kind of third option fits into this? Or I think I'm trying to figure out what it looks like, what the Coast Guard goes out with. Does it look like it's going to be on Peterson or telephone, or are there other people saying yes and actually pay me just a little bit, Coast Guard, because I've got the perfect land for you and I'll build it for you?
Well, of course, I won't be writing that RFI, so I can't tell you exactly what it will say. I can tell you that the Coast Guard is very committed to a fair and transparent process, and they are a government agency just like we are, and so they want to make sure that all the public has access to the same information and the same opportunities. So I think that's why this kind of idea of an this idea of an MOU allows, the city property to be considered, but isn't we're just gonna go, build it there, because there very easily could be better fits out there within our private development community. So I think that was just our idea on how to strike that balance, not knowing how feasible it is, right, for a developer to develop their own property. I mean, we don't know the answer to those questions until they're asked.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I just conceptually I wanted to make sure I was imagining it right. I don't have concerns about that, and my bigger concern is making sure that we are leveraging what we have and being a partner to the Coast Guard. So this sounds good to me.
Further questions from the assembly? Madam Mayor.
I just have a quick question. When you talk about Telephone Hill, you're just talking about a portion of the hill, right?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't, again, know exactly what that would look like, but I mean, if in the ideal world, according to Katie, it would be a building with some Telephone Hill units and some units for our general public because of just how we have in our Telephone Hill place guide portioned out those 4 lots.
Thank you. She does, I think she does want a motion for the recommendation.
So I'll just read your recommendation, but do you have what you need from us on this topic?
Yes, thank you,
All right.
Madam Mayor.
So I move that we direct the city manager to work on an MOU with U.S. Coast Guard on the potential of offering CBJ land at Peterson Hill and a portion of Telephone Hill for consideration by private developers to build housing suitable for the U.S. Coast Guard personnel. And ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, that motion is adopted. Pardon me. Anyway, that last motion was adopted. And then moving on to the next agenda item, Glacier Lake outburst flood update. Manager Kester, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. I do not want to belabor this memo, but mostly I just wanted to keep, as I have new information, I want to keep putting it in front of you and putting it in front of the public, knowing that we're all kind of racing towards this end of October meeting where we will be, I won't be asking you necessarily for major decisions, but we'll be asking you to start really thinking through major decisions. So I will just let you know as far as you process what those decisions will be. I'm literally working through that September 8th memo that I presented to you, and I was like, you're going to need to know, you're going to need to decide, like, do we use an LID? And then I'm getting you questions that I think you're going to ask about, a phase 2 LID. I'm going to getting you questions about a special tax district. So if you are wondering, like, how is she going to present us this information, or what is she going to need from us? Refer back to that September 8th memo and feel free to ask me questions or be like, hey, I really could use this particular piece of information. And that can happen at any time, doesn't happen to happen tonight. With that being said, I just want to update you on 2 pieces that we are continuing to work on, and that's with the maintenance of the barriers. We have submitted a scope of work to the Army Corps of Engineers. They will continue to provide us that technical assistance, that is engineering and oversight for the maintenance of the HESCO barriers. So that has been great news. It's been great to have that partnership. We've pushed them a little bit on some questions about paying for a little bit more than just technical oversight, and they're definitely, considering what that could be. And so I hope to be able to give you more information on what that looks like at the October 30th meeting. So in the context of maintenance of barriers and of phase 2, we're really trying to be creative. And I credit General Getz when he was here and spent so much time in our community for really trying to think of other creative ways that the Army Corps can help in near-term flood fighting. So that is something we've already started, maintenance on those barriers, and then we'll be working with contractors to do the rest. And we, thanks to the Assembly, have some funding for that work, because that work, well, I don't know that we have it yet. I suppose it still needs to be passed, but it has been introduced. So we have the prospect for being able to cover those expenditures. I want to talk a little bit about phase 2. You have a map in your packet that kind of portions out phase 2. And what I'm trying to do is to bring you phase 2 in a order of priority, because I want to be able to say under, this particular inundation level, informed by scientists that hopefully can inform us because they're not on a federal, they're not shut down, which is actually a big concern for this project right now. We think you should do, these first 4 phases of phase 2 or something like that. And so that's why you see the map with some prioritization. And what I'll be bringing you back is like, okay, well, how much property does that protect and how much does it cost? Because phase 2 is, as you recall, significantly more expensive than phase 1, and that's because of the cost of armoring. So I wanted to let you know, unless you object, we will be sending staff out to do site assessments of phase 2 banks. And that means that they'll be in people's backyards and they'll be getting asked questions, and that means you'll be getting asked questions. So I wanted to, before we sent staff out and kind of rekindle that process, I wanted to let you all know and give you the opportunity to give us any alternative direction on that.
Questions, Ms. Atkinson?
Just a quick one. I noticed we had talked about some of the repairs on the ESCOs, your estimate being around $1 million, and I noticed a little greater than sign on that memo, on that map today. So I guess, is there a range, or are you still hoping it'll be around $1 million, or could it be quite a bit higher than that?
Well, hope springs eternal, Assemblymember Atkinson. I don't have accurate cost estimates. I think a lot of it will be how much we can leverage with our partnership with the Army Corps, again, who's been a great partner. So I think that what you're really looking at, or what you're seeing, is just the great uncertainty that staff has not having had that technical assessment done.
Ms. Wall?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We made a lot of decisions kind of before we had the mapping done, which made sense. Given the timeline, we knew the maps were coming so that we could kind of check our work. Last year, everything's modeled, so of course it's not going to be perfect. It was kind of extraordinarily high resolution information, but we know that water was higher than we were predicting, at least in some places. Maybe it was lower than we were predicting in other places. I don't know. Are we going to have, and I know how long that type stuff takes. We did it very quickly. Are we going to have a bit more like data on the flood mapping or the hydrology changes before making these decisions? And I only ask because, my anxieties right now are still with phase 1 and making sure those highest risk places, the barriers are strong enough and big enough, given it felt like we were barely made it on that front last time.
So I think what I can answer for you about the modeling and the mapping, we believe that we experienced closer to 18 level inundation flooding in some areas. And that's what, with how high it was on those, the HESCO barriers. And that, of course, is problematic because it's a 16 and a half flood level. And so the scientists are looking at a different way of, they're like, using the lake is no longer an appropriate assessment of those flood levels. So they are looking at kind of changing how we talk about and how we think about the inundation level. And I think that will really help. I do think that we also need, the other thing is the river has totally changed because the August Gluff totally changed the river. And so that modeling is also, updating that modeling is also important. Robert is very anxious to say something, so I'm going to let him say it.
I am constantly impressed with how much she remembers about all of these meetings that we put together. The rate is the key. So the speed with which the water comes out of the basin is the big variable. The other variable we understand much better, right? The volume of water in the basin, but the rate that water comes out of the basin is much less understood compared to the volume number. And there's a science meeting in early October where it's hopefully will be happening in early October, that we'll be getting more information that we'll hopefully be able to use to rerun that model and just further refine that. But Assemblymember Wall is correct. It is a model, and we certainly saw things in real life this summer that the model did not predict. And we got a little bit lucky with the height of the HESCOs and where things landed. The map that is included in the packet, there's kind of a green box that's called out on that that's maybe worth noting, that it's pointing at what we refer to as Carr Bend there on Killowitch, and you know, just noting there that without the HESCOs, whereas in 2024 we had water coming 2 to 3 feet out of the riverbank, in 2025 without the GLOFs or without the HESCOs it would have been 8 feet out of the riverbank, and that's just a monumental difference that the model wasn't precisely accurate on because of that unknown variable around the rate of release.
Other questions? Oh, Madam Mayor, pardon me, I forgot.
Again. Just a quick question. I'm assuming that when you're talking about assessing and fixing barrier condition, you'll also be dealing with the pipes, because we had a lot of trouble with our one-way valves and the pipes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Weldon. It is challenging because if you do have overtopping of those barriers, you want that water to drain back out. Otherwise, you create a swimming pool. So Director Gratch and I were just talking about that today, and you know what that risk assessment is.
You're good. You're good.
If I could just mention the last thing in the memo is I think I spoke with this a little about this at the September 8th meeting, but Army Corps of Engineers is really racing towards a much an expedited, I guess we'll call it a midterm solution rather than a enduring solution. And they've been given direction from their highest leadership to work towards a recommendation for the spring and possible construction as early as the end of 2027. I think there's a lot of things that have to work perfectly for that to happen, including uninterrupted federal funding, which means we also would need to be providing any necessary match. But you should be very impressed with the speed and diligence at which they're working. I do have concerns that public process will go by the wayside with just the speed. I mean, the poor team was like, well, Christmas is canceled. And, you know, I think that's where it's our job to try to care for some of that public process and keeping our public informed. But inevitably, people will be like, I want the Corps to look at this, and I want the Corps to spend more time on my thing here, and I want them to really vet this idea. And there will be tension in moving quickly and all of that. And so I just want to like foreshadow that, because you should also be very satisfied that they are moving so quickly, and that will just be a consequence that we will need to navigate.
Thank you. Ms. Uskandis, then Ms. Wall.
Just one question on that speed. The midterm solution, that's not is that the breakneck speed to, people have talked about a levee or whatever it is that breakneck speeding towards that solution, towards that long-term solution, or it's a solution before it's not a middle solution?
Well, yes, all these timeline terms even confuse me. So, but yes, it is a solution that buys down risk. The way General Getz put it is it buys down our risk. The HESCO barriers buy down our risk, but certainly not completely. So what's the next best thing that we can do to buy down our risk? And I think right now, you know, I mean, hopefully for the next 20 to 30 years, it'll depend on what the recommendation is. But that's kind of, I think what they're looking at now could change when they spend some more time really digging into it.
Ms. Wall.
I think my question got answered. Thank you.
Further questions on this topic? All right, be ready for October 30th. Next item is the Marine Park transfer. We did work on this in the Public Works and Facilities Committee. Today, we had a unanimous motion from that committee. It is now here to give the body a chance to say anything before, well, anyway, and then see where it goes next. But Ms. Pierce, maybe an intro, slight history lesson, whatever you think is best for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is a hot potato process that has bounced from committee back to the assembly, back to the committee. It feels like a couple times. And the reason for the urgency is that staff is hoping to bid the project and a little bit concerned about further escalating project costs if we postpone the project for longer. So when it was first bounced back to PWFC, the Public Works and Facilities Committee was presented with kind of general recommendation to cut some money out of the project. Staff presented a couple of different options that were the kind of the two things that we felt like we could comfortably do without sending the project back to design, which would result in further delays and further costs. So we recommended either getting rid of the covered seating, the covering over the seating area, or the covering over the stage. That committee had a lot of discussion, came back with a recommendation of removing the stage covering. I'm looking at Chair Hughes-Geddes. It wasn't the most emphatic recommendation. She's shaking her head. And so it came to the full body. There was discussion. There was some discussion about removing the vendor booths. We did not conclude that as a recommendation because it would send the project back to the design. And also the vendor booths have the potential to be revenue producing, quite substantially revenue producing. And so it was sent back to PWFC. And so what we did was we presented the committee with kind of the same three options. And I should also note the initial transfer request was for $3.5 million. Engineering staff sharpened their pencils. We got the transfer request down to $3 million. And then subsequently, the Public Works and Facilities Committee today forwarded the request for $3 million back to be discussed by the Committee of the Whole. In some one-on-one discussions with Assembly members, we felt that because this had bounced around so much, it was important for the entire Assembly to discuss it in committee so that we could move forward with a final recommendation to be reviewed at the reorganization meeting on October 27th, I believe. And we have Mr. Hoffbauer, the project manager for this project, has very patiently sat through the entirety of tonight's meeting, and Deputy Director Varelli from Parks and Rec is also online and can take questions about kind of Parks and Rec's more practical use of the park. So with that, I am happy to take questions. Or, phone one of my friends here.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Ms. Hughes-Geddes, as chair of PWC, was there anything you wanted to add or?
I think that's a fine characterization of what happened so far, and I would just add from Public Works and Facilities Committee perspective, before it came back to us a second time, we did receive outburst of public engagement in the way of public letters regarding the process, and so take that into consideration. I'll characterize that as saying that people wrote to, no, you guys have been getting them, you know what they say. That they didn't want to throw away the large public process that we did, and people were pushing for the park to be fully funded.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes-Geddes. Questions? Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Please excuse me, I'm one of those people who doesn't sit on Public Works, so I've only followed this as it came to the Assembly and I got pushed back. I remember when we sent it back the first time, well, I think I remember that the price tag was like 10 point something, and that's why it caught all of our eyes. What is is that the total project of the cost, the project still? And this is just the additional 3 million that's needed. Is that correct?
Thank you, through the chair. This is the additional 3 million that's needed to fully fund the project.
So if this was to pass, what would be the whole budget of the project?
Madam Chair, I'm going to call Mr. Hoffbauer up just to make sure I give a correct number. Sorry, through Mr. Chair. It's late.
No problem, no problem. Mr. Hoffbauer, thanks for sticking with us tonight and for being here. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Assembly. And to answer the question, we'd be just shy of the 10 million for a project total.
Other questions? Madam Mayor?
So my question is, I still have a little problem with the cost of the project, I'll have to say, is what's our plan? If we both have two covered areas, what's our plan to keep our homeless or unhoused population from using that as a camp?
You're the only one not sitting back, Mr. Barr, so that might be for you.
Through the chair, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we would look to the guidance that we've received from the body. Most of you probably remember the internal guidance memo that I wrote to our leadership team, our department heads, a couple of months ago that attempts to kind of straddle the kind of policy guidance between what's existing in code and what the body has directed staff to prioritize in terms of enforcement and addressing impacts. I think that's one thing I would say in response to that question. And then the other, probably equally as important, is Deputy Director Varelli would be well suited to talk about the specifics here, but to activate the space, to engage the community in activity and events and programming in these spaces in Marine Park, and do that as comprehensively and with as much equity as possible.
Thanks, Mr. Barr. Other questions? We have an updated ordinance that was put out in front of you now with a $3 million transfer. If we want to keep that moving along, that is the ordinance to move. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that the Committee of the Whole forward ordinance number 2025-01BE, capital EEC, to the full assembly for introduction, or has it already been introduced?
Brief eddies. right, bringing us back. Yep, we'll discuss that here. Madam Attorney, would you help us out here?
I
on-
sure will.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so it sounds like what happened today at PWFC is 2025-01 BEC was recommended. However, that would require introduction and public hearing, which puts the project at least 6 weeks behind. The alternative is you can move to forward 2025-01 BE, which is transferring 3.5 million from CIP to Marine Park. You can direct me to draft a resolution with the title change concurrently to 3 million and to reduce the ordinance itself to 3 million. So that way we fix the title problem. Right now it's 3.5, it needs to be 3. Which we can do with a resolution concurrent next time. And you tell finance that you want section 2 to be reduced to $3 million. And because that's a little bit different than what we've always done, I can let the body know that I did some research on title changes and where that comes from. It is practice of the assembly that if a title changes, we reintroduce. I did not find anything in code requiring that. And I'm currently working on a process with finance to fix that for you and come up with a different system. However, if you look at the state legislature, as an example, when they move things from, let's say, the House to the Senate, and they have to deal with a title change, they use a resolution to fix the title. The whole point is just to make it very clear to the public what is being done, where the funding is coming from, and not to do anything that doesn't have the approval of the body. So I would be comfortable with you doing that now, if that's what you wish to do.
Mr. Bryson.
I was going to move to do what the attorney just said, because I don't think I could have said it behind her.
Okay, and that was to, forward that, to move the ordinance 2501.
With a resolution to correct, yes.
And with a resolution to change the title. Does that work?
That would be my motion,
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. We've heard the motion. Sure.
Point of order, I don't think we've dispensed with Ms. Scandy's motion yet, unless she's withdrawn it.
Good point. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll move to withdraw my motion.
Very good. Any objection to that motion? Seeing none.
Which one? Ms. Hughes Candy's
I only made,
Made one.
yep, I just made one motion.
But are we objecting to her withdrawing her motion, or are we objecting to Wade's motion?
You could object to her withdrawing her motion, if you'd like. I think you can object to that motion. Yeah, you can. But seeing no one objecting to that motion is withdrawn. And now we have Mr. Bryson's motion on the floor. Are there any objections to Mr. Bryson's motion, Madam Mayor?
I objection. I'll speak to my objection, and I know I'm in the minority. We all were concerned that this project was over $10 million, and now it's $500,000 less, and we're okay spending that much money? I'm not, so I'll object.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other comments? Very good. You have a Ms. Hughes Candies.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll speak just very briefly. I will not say that that's not a ton of money. The first time we saw it where we're looking at the overall project and the overall cost, I agree that's a ton of money. I do believe that I have been swayed by the amount of public that has engaged with me, the funding source, and the amount that the community uses this particular space. So I think this is an example of using cruise ship passenger fees for a park that is pretty well used, so I will support this.
Ms. Hall.
And I am also going to object, and the whole reason it came back to us to consider this And as it was explained to me, by removing the clamshell covering out of the total project cost, it would be the easiest to add back in without a redesign. And I agree with the mayor that 10 million sounds pretty high, and with that amount, you know, and I think maybe the public may not understand those nuances of the discussion. So I'm going to stand by what we decided the original time in Public Works.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Ms. Hendricks, we have a motion and objection. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. For Mr. Bryson's motion to move ordinance 2025-01, lowercase b, uppercase e, with instructions to the city attorney to draft a resolution to change the title in section 2 to 3 million. Mr. Bryson.
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
No.
Ms. Hall.
No.
Mr. Steininger.
Yes.
Ms. Adkisson.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
No.
Ms. Hughes-Scandies.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries with 5 yeas and 3 nays. 6 yeas and 3 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. All right. We are now through that item. Thank you both and Ms. Farrelly online for sticking with that and sticking with us. Madam Manager, anyone else? Staff reports? There are none. Our next meeting date is November 3rd. No supplemental materials. With that, we are adjourned.